read something. You'd mentioned Mark, and I got to meet Mark, and like one of the first things that happened when I met him was I realized he was the crewmate who wrote that wonderful like crew log several months ago now about like from the perspective of his mug, like from the perspective of his hot chocolate mug, and I was like, this is amazing. So he wrote a crew diary called Circumnavigators Club. Did you happen to read that or know of it?
Yeah. He ran it
Yeah.
by me before he put it up. Yeah, it's
And
inspired by the Breakfast Club.
by the Breakfast Club, yeah, which is I mean, a movie that obviously he knows very well. Certainly I do, and maybe you do too. He says, I'd love to read a little bit of it if you don't mind, Andrew.
Please do. Yeah.
Um, he says, Andrew, coach, Diane, scholar, Jessica, executive, Lorenzo, passionate youth, Mark, chemist, Ran, public relations, Tom, veteran. We came together as people from different backgrounds on this adventure. This is how society saw us and how we saw each other. As this adventure developed outside of societal constraints, souls were bared, experiences shared, and connections made, and we all changed. We grew as sailors, friends, and finally as family. As one does with family, we have come together, fought, cried, and laughed together. In an ode to the Breakfast Club, we feel similar to them in the closing letter. Society sees us as they want to see us. In simplest terms and the most convenient definitions, we have found that we are all a coach, a scholar, an executive, a passionate youth, a chemist, public relations, and a veteran. Sincerely yours, the Circumnavigators Club. And I just wanted to celebrate that. Like, yes, this was a hard one. And oh my gosh, like there's some real, to me, it felt like there was some real beauty there too.
Oh yeah. No, it was a beautifully written post. Yeah, I was there. Mark was on my watch, and so I was there when he was inspired with the idea of the Breakfast Club letter. And then yeah, he showed me a draft, and I think he really nailed it. And and that's why as I said, how we're doing performance-wise doesn't take away from any of the rest of this experience, including what Mark beautifully described there. Yeah, I mean, that's the part that will linger, right? Those relationships and the bonds and the, like Mark described, the family as it is, will be something that, we celebrate for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And not just the circumnavigators, because we have great relationships with so many of our crew. I think this week we have about 15 or 16 people who've showed up who were former crew members.
Wow.
Who came to Scotland some from Edmonton up in Canada, some from Colorado, some from Sweden, people from all over the UK. They've come to celebrate with us,
Wow.
nearing the end of the race. And so that says a lot about, the kind of culture that we've had on the boat amongst the crew. And, as Mark described, like we are different people in a lot of ways, or we've perhaps another way to say it is we've learned a lot about ourselves that maybe was hidden, before this experience. So that's something that we'll definitely cherish as we step off the boat next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a difference, I guess, energetically speaking, between being almost done and being done?
I don't know yet.
I guess we'll find out, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's been my trick all year long, is to stay present and avoid answering questions about the future. So I'm not gonna fall off that train. It's interesting. I got a lady that does the recruitment for Clipper. I met her last night at a recruitment event, and she asked whether the reality had set in of what we've accomplished yet. And I said, said, I feel like it has, I feel like, when we got to Seattle, it was a sense of how far Seattle is from England, and like how massive an undertaking it's been, an accomplishment to sail that far. Going through the Panama Canal and coming into the Atlantic Ocean one more time felt like a moment, right? And so I said, it feels like it, but I don't know yet. And she said, yeah, that's a good answer. She said, because for her, she had done the race twice. She said it wasn't until she got away from the race and away from people that saw what they were doing as normal. It wasn't until she got to a different, circle of people who said, what is it that you were doing for last year? And sort of the awe that inspired in other people. And, we get to experience that as we go around these days, both because we have social media, which she didn't have when she did the race. So we get a lot of that feedback, but also when we come to places like we're in now in Oban, where, if I'm wearing my Clipper jacket and I walk into the local coffee shop or restaurant or bookstore or what have you, people are so excited to talk and ask questions about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I had a really funny experience of meeting a couple the other day who were from an area quite close to where I grew up in Canada, and were so excited to meet me. And then I took them on a tour of the boat and the whole thing, and I didn't know them at all. Just happened that they met me on the dock one day. And the next day I saw them on the street, and the lady had Googled about me and the race and found a newspaper article from my local newspaper back home about me doing the race. And she had the hotel printed off for her so I could autograph it. I was like,
wow.
I was like, how absurd is this, right? But it kind of goes to the point that Della from Flipper was making, is that, a lot of this is starting to feel very normal now. Yes, we sailed across the Atlantic. So what? Third time, no big deal. But crossing the Atlantic Ocean for a sailor is still a really big deal, and a lot of people never do that. And we've done it 3 times now.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of normality to what we're doing that isn't really reality if we look outside of this bubble. So I suspect the answer is going to be yes, it will feel quite different after the race.
Well,
I think,
I'll stop you there. How does it feel now to be almost done?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it feels like we are done, like from the racing, or not from what a huge endeavor we were facing when we left a year ago. It feels like it's pretty much done. Now, those of us that know sailing know that the area that we're sailing for the next 5 days has historically some massive storms and crazy weather and lots of things that can go wrong. So we're fully aware that we have 5 potentially very challenging days in front of us. But the sense of the time duration and the distance duration on a lot of the previous legs that we've had, especially over the last couple of months with the Pacific and then going all the way around North America and then coming across the Atlantic, like those are big, long legs. 5 days, 900 miles feels like, parking the boat in some ways. And so there's a bit of that going on, and, you're booking your tickets home, you're making arrangements with family to, what comes next and all of that stuff. And so that starts seeping into your mind and kind of creates a sense of finality. So it's a bit of a weird feeling right now. Yeah. Like, it's impossible to keep separation from the end of the race and then, normal life resuming. But, right now we're just trying to really stay present to getting the boat ready to go, getting the crew ready to go, and then, getting into a mindset of how we can be competitive for 5 days. And then, when we do tie the boat up in Portsmouth, I'm really curious how that's going to feel. I think lots of people will be super emotional, and I don't really know how I'm going to feel about it yet. So wait and see.
Yeah, excited
Stay
to find
tuned.
out. Yeah, stay tuned. And actually the questions that we have are, there's at least one of them that I'm going to wait until the next time we talk, which is so funny because it won't be in next month. It'll be in a week. It's
A
kind of
week.
cool.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I think like this feels like a great moment to bring these questions in. So Melanie, our friend Mel, um, I got to spend not just time with her before I went to DC and got to spend time with you, but after. And after
Cool.
we got, yeah, it was really fun. We got to talking about like I got to have a tour of the boat and interview, have conversations with people in the crew and like and share. I know Melanie. Hi, if you're listening, Melanie. I know she's a listener. So some of this she's heard from your perspective, and I think that was really present for her as well. Um, she she was curious about as you got closer to the shores of the UK, like how did your experience shift?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there was a couple of moments. About halfway across the Atlantic, we were at the same longitude as Uruguay, which meant that we had actually circled the whole planet and covered a full circle. So
Wow.
that sort of was officially made us circumnavigators. So that was a moment. It kind of felt weird to celebrate it in the middle of the race, but it technically meant we had gone full circle around 365 degrees, and we're back where we started. 360 degrees, sorry, 365 days, 360 degrees.
There we go. Good catch.
Yeah. But definitely seeing Scotland, there was a reality that this, like I said, it does feel like a sense of closure to be back on UK soil and to see the beautiful coast of Scotland from the ocean, with the sun rising. It was just an incredible way to arrive, and then to see sort of all the green hills and beauty that this part of Scotland has, was an awesome way to arrive. And I think that, to be honest, I think next week is going to have a lot of that in a different way. Like all of our training was done around the Portsmouth area and an island called the Isle of Wight, and then we did a trip across to the coast of France and back, and we will cover that territory as part of our finishing route. And so I know that when we all see the Isle of Wight on this race, it will be an emotional moment, because we've seen that island when we left Portsmouth. There's a picture of me, I think, on the first day of the race that Clipper published with the sun setting in the background, and that was the Isle of Wight in the background. So we'll be coming right to that exact same location to finish
Wow.
the race. So that will feel very different, and to see, it's kind of like when you do a long trip, or you've been away from home for a while, and then you get back and you start seeing all the little landmarks that mean you're closer and closer and closer to your, to whatever home is. There'll be a lot of that on this last race, and I expect that will be, a different emotion, just knowing that that's the last time we're going to sail in and see all of these things as part of the race. And we've tried not to talk about oh, this is the last this is the last that. We've tried to not go there, but it will be hard to avoid it, I think, on this last race.
Thank you. A time or two ago, you said something about how there's like an old story about or there's lots of stories maybe about sailors who sort of decide not to come into land, basically to not, you know, to basically change their lives so that it is much more about being out on the ocean and not as much about being on land. And something in what you were just saying was making me curious if that's ever in your mind right now. I mean, not in the sense of, well, I'll just say that and then let you, yeah.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be commandeering the boat before we get to dock. I think I would have a mutiny on my hands if there's most people. I wouldn't say all, but I'd say most people are definitely ready to get off the boat.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, this was a stark example because as we got close to the Scottish coast, everybody's phones started, pinging because we had cell service, and the very first words that we heard was there was an assassination attempt on Trump.
Yep.
And boy, if that doesn't give you a reason to turn the boat around and go back the other way, I don't know what would, right? Like that's a real example of the difference between living a life of adventure and exploration and, travel and getting away from that. It's not that you get away from the events, but from everything that comes with the events that are unfolding back in whatever normal life, however you define that. So that was a pretty interesting example of what causes sailors, and I think a lot of explorers, to just keep exploring. There's an unbelievable attraction to the simplicity of life. And it's interesting, that lady that I spoke about, Della from Clipper, she had done the interview of me when I first applied to Clipper.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of her interview questions, I was invited to ask her a question. And I said, I asked her what the one thing that she missed most after the race. And she said it was the simplicity of life on the boat, of just, there was one thing to do next.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't 10 things to choose from. There was one thing to do.
Mm.
And then there was a thing after that. And it became just a much simpler, calmer, less confused life. And I totally get that. And I also get that with all the noise that we have, from news and social and all the other stuff, the simplicity that comes with being detached and untethered from that. Untethered was my word of the year for this year, because it was untethering the boat from land was one, but being untethered from a lot of what comes with, life on land was another. And so I can resonate with it. And what's interesting is one of the things that's happened since we've been here in Scotland is I was invited to a conversation about whether I would be interested in applying to perhaps do one of the paid roles in a future race. So that's interesting because that would mean a whole another year of doing what I've just done. In a different capacity. And so I don't know. As I said, I've not gone into that space of what comes next. But, things start emerging as you're,
Right.
as you go. And so there are paths ahead, and some of them are clear right now, and some of them are not so clear. But there's definitely an attraction to what we've just done that in one way or another, I think will inform whatever my life looks like going ahead, of the, the sort of untethering from long periods of time from a lot of communication, or a lot of news channels, a lot of information flow, and the simplicity of life that I've really enjoyed of it, being on the boat. So we'll see what that all means. But I'm pretty sure the boat will get parked in Portsmouth with all of us still on it. Let's
You're
hope
not going
so.
to
Yeah.
want to be sleeping on the boat or sneaking it back out or whatever.
Well, I'm sleeping on the boat here in Oban, and I really enjoy being on the boat and enjoy what comes with it. But I know, Monique's coming to Portsmouth, and we have a close friend who lives nearby, and so I'm looking forward to seeing them and spending a couple of days getting the boat put away before we hop on the plane to go back to Canada.
Wow. That's awesome that Monique is coming out.
Hmm.
You guys haven't seen each other now for like 6 months or something, I feel like.
Since January, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. And as you were talking too, I was remembering, I can't remember if I've shared this with you just from my hiking experience. I went from one side of England to the other, Northern England, and I got into it was the last day. I had my pebble in my pocket that I'd picked up in the Irish Sea, and I was about to toss it into the North Sea. And we met the companions and I that I was with. We met a couple who had gone all the way across the way that we did in the direction that I went. And they were spending that night in Robin Hood's Bay, and then they were turning around and going back. And I just remember being like, oh, like I would like to do that
Yeah, yeah,
on
totally.
some